I was like, you'd probably respond.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
So I appreciate you making time to be out here. As we kind of went over, most of you are here for ENC 1101, the Kara Kelly's class. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So some of you, like you said, have already attended a workshop yesterday as part of the Getting Started series, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the second one for you. You're 2/3 done. Feels great. If you're watching this online later on, there are this PowerPoint, for example, other materials available in Blackboard listed in the right-hand side. So you can see the PowerPoint after. If there's anything you don't remember, didn't take notes on, or just kind of curious. For example, the link to the video we're going to watch here is a practical exercise. But the idea behind this process of this Getting Started video is writing a 3-minute summary. Is that appealing to you? It feels like a sales pitch to me.
Yeah, I have to write one today.
So has anyone written a summary yet for 1101 or 1143? A drafted one? It's due today. Yeah, exactly. Right. So would you be interested in a way that could save you time in drafting that? This is my sales pitch, right? This is kind of smart. It's a sales pitch, right? And I appreciate that. But it's 2016. We write differently now. We don't compose simply by writing. How many of you are going to draft your summaries by pen and paper? Anybody?
Oh, I do.
You do? Good.
But like pencil.
Sorry, writing utensil and receiving paper.
Yeah.
Great. How about you type and then turn in the draft? Do one draft, edit it, submit it, all in one sitting usually, right? The idea behind this exercise is to consider how you can use audio dictation to make your writing process that much simpler. So how many of you have a smartphone? Some sort of recording? Wow, 100% of you. So each of you has this device that allows you to do things, to communicate, to text, to take pictures, to use emoticons, emojis, whatever, to communicate across distances. How many use it to record dictation? You ever dictate notes to yourself? Like, under what occasions do you do that?
Sometimes, like when I'll take a SIL class, it's like for like a science usually, like I'll say things to remember it.
So does it help you to remember?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you take notes in a class by taking pen and paper out or pencil, or using your computer to just kind of write down your notes? Anybody? How many people just try to remember? No one anymore? Okay, great. So we use different media, right, to try to transcribe these notes. And that's what we're going to get at in this exercise, this consideration. So the broad strokes here is we're going to talk about thinking versus talking versus typing versus penning. So how do we think about different ways of recording information? Memory, computers, pencil and paper, all these different ways, right? How fast are your fingers? Anyone type faster than 100 words a minute? Can anyone type and think at the same time while listening to someone give information out? So if I read something to you, could you write it out by hand and keep up with me? Do you feel?
No.
Maybe. I bet some do that. But would you be able to think about it at the same time and be critical of it is the second question. How do digital technologies have limits? You ever done autocorrect problems before? How can you delimit those to kind of make them easier to deal with after the fact? And how does this relate to writing a summary in the general sense? So that's kind of the 3 steps we're taking here. And the class is going to break into basically 3 parts. My talking senselessly at you about things you already know but haven't maybe thought about in a specific way. Practicing doing a summary for a 3-minute process, and then you doing that for yourself for 10 minutes at the end of the class. So an artifact-based experience. So I already asked this question. How fast do you type? Do you know? Has anyone ever taken a typing test? Could you guess? 30 words a minute? 50 words a minute?
65.
65 words a minute? Yeah, you have taken a test? How fast, Trey? 55, okay. So how fast do you think you talk per words per minute wise?
Faster.
We'll say faster. How about that, right? I think that's a good observation. No matter what number you put on that, some people talk quickly. Think of an auctioneer, right? That could be really fast cadence of all these words just exiting. So what is the better way to kind of capture that? So there's note taking. I asked this question already. So you can take notes by hand. That's easy, but you miss things, and you have to decide, what do I want to actually choose from here? How about typing? When you're typing things, you have the opportunity to do the same, but what happens when you typo? Or when you forget where you were? Or all these different kinds of questions. Then you have audio dictation. So you have a smartphone, and you have an iPhone. That's an iPhone? I think so. So you have the opportunity to use your phone to help you out in this way. So I asked that question earlier. How many of you actually use audio dictation actively? Anybody? And the answer was no before, and it's still no, because why would it have changed, right? So last night, while planning this out in detail, I actually spent 3 minutes drafting this workshop into notes on my phone on my drive home. 3 minutes of my talking to myself, which is always fun, better than traffic anyway, actually accounts for 500 words of just me rattling off information, and you get something, for example, as, Anybody ever had trouble with Siri before? What kind of trouble?
Talking back.
She talks back to you. How dare Robot talk back to you? So, for example, I wrote this to myself just to kind of get an idea, to think it out, to talk it out, before I even sat down at a computer. I got home, I copied all these notes onto a Word document just from my 3 minutes of talking. It ended up being somewhere in the order of 457 words. Well, how long does your summary need to be?
250.
Yeah, 240 to 260, right? So in that ballpark. So how easy would it be for you to occupy a half a page with words with just you're talking into an audio dictation device, like say Siri, say Mac's native digital audio dictation, or text, Dragon speech if you have a Windows machine, or Cortana if you have a Windows phone or other device. Really easy is the idea. It's economical anyway. So when you do that, though, it's great, it's convenient, except do you talk like a robot? Do you talk like Siri talks?
No.
No, I don't. I sure know I don't, because when I actually went back and read through this, there are a lot of things that made no sense. For example, I'm trying to record important information in eventually a succinct way. I'm thinking, what is succinct? Oh, succinct. And going back and catching those small flows. I cannot tell you the number of times I've actually received writing from students that contains typos like these, because people don't change their autocorrect and they let Word change things for them. Do you feel like Word is smarter than you?
Word sucks.
You think that. Word is a tool, but it's only as good as its wielder. So for your sake, you need to be able to make choices. For example, when you open Word now, its default format settings, are they already in MLA settings or not? No, it's not. True question. They're not. You need to change them. Same thing with autocorrect. Do you let Word make choices for you and say, like, oh, did you mean this word? How often do you see that on your phone where it suggests a word and you're thinking, that's not what I meant? And it changes it for you. So being able to wield the tool is something that you need to be able to consider how you're doing. How does that work for you? So when you're using a device like that, you need to be wary of those risks and consider those ideas. Where does that bridge over to summary? How does that matter? Summary is a great opportunity, because how short is summary? 250 words? That's half a page, single space, right? Maybe a full page, double space. It's not that much space. So a handful of you said you've already kind of drafted your summary. How long did it take you to draft it? It didn't take any time?
I didn't do it yet.
Who's done it? Anybody? Oh, this is great. They're due in, I think, 10 hours and 50 minutes or so. So how much time do you expect, if you were to do it just by typing it out, that it might take you to actually compose your first draft?
An hour or two. An hour.
Hour or two?
30 minutes.
30 minutes? So it varies by person. Anyone else want to offer like a guess for your process?
An hour.
Okay, we'll say an hour. So we're getting a pretty good duration here. It takes time. Everyone's takes time. Does anyone do it in 3 minutes? Would anyone even think, oh, I can do that in 3 minutes? Well, why would you, right? Because it's so ludicrous. Because when you type, it takes time. Do you ever stop and think while you're typing what you're asking yourself you mean? So you're combining your typing, your composition process with your critical thinking process. What if you could stream those across time and break them into discrete moments? Going from your notes taking to your draft on a page, to asking questions about what you probably meant, and then reorganizing that. That might take a little bit longer than 3 minutes, right? But do you think it might take as long as an hour once you already have the content on the page? Moreover, who has trouble getting content on a page? Intimidated by the white screen. It's empty. Where do I start? What's the first thing I say? Do I want to write a really good first sentence and try to go from there? Or is this something where I need to just keep typing a whole bunch of crap until it just makes sense and I cut out the bad stuff and leave the mostly good stuff? Yeah, pretty much, right? What's the step after that? What do you do after that? There's no wrong answer here.
Stare at the screen.
Stare at the screen some more, right?
Yeah.
How many of you get a peer to look at this or ask questions in a conversation kind of way? 1 in 10. 2? 2 in 10. So this is one of my favorite experiences when you talk with students or anyone else about writing. You say, well, where do you start? I don't know. I'm having all these problems. I don't even know where to begin. And that's a very common reaction to where do you start to write. But if you are talking an idea out with someone who's taking notes for you and then turns them around and says, here's what you just said, and you think, I said that? Oh, wow, that's pretty impressive. I didn't think I knew that. And the expression of that idea when someone else takes notes for you is something that seems pretty handy, no? So you get to ask yourself questions, or you can get a peer to ask yourself questions. And we're going to do this here in a minute. But the idea is if someone else takes notes, I recommend a computer. But if you don't have access to a computer, if you don't trust Siri, maybe you ask a peer. Hey, would you talk to me about this? For example, how many of you are in 1101 reading that story, the G essay right now about what is discourse analysis? Majority of you is. I think 9 out of 10 of you is. Great. So how many of you talk to other people about what that means, what that essay is actually saying? And I don't understand this. Do you understand? Have you had a conversation about it yet? In class you did. Great. So how about this? Outside of class, anyone else who's not in a classroom and taking it online? Have you found someone else to kind of reach in and talk to about it? Have you tried?
Yeah, my roommate.
Did it go well? Is your roommate also in the class?
Yeah.
How about you? Were you able to?
Yeah.
Is your roommate also in the class?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Convenient, right? So imagine you're talking to someone who's not in the class. We'll think of Charity. Charity hasn't written G's essay yet, I don't think. What is discourse analysis? Would any of you feel comfortable explaining summarily, succinctly, what is discourse analysis essay to Charity in a paragraph in 200 words right now? If I just put you on the spot? Probably not, right? No one wants to feel that uncomfortable. But if she started asking you questions, oh, what's the essay called? Oh, who wrote that? What's it about generally? Okay, so what are the parts of it? Where does he start? All of those individual discrete questions, what does that allow you to do for her?
Summarize it.
Hey, yeah, you can summarize it pretty easily, right? So the writing of a summary is a pretty mechanical thing. Getting past all the decision making about what information do I include, what's detail, what's minor, what's major, what's the point with a capital P. Conversation, though, is at the heart of anything academic. You never write in a vacuum. You never write for nobody else. Even future self, future you is different from you now. You ever written something you didn't understand because you wrote it a year ago and just don't understand what you were thinking a year ago and the writing is just, what? Yeah, even future you is a different you. So for the purposes of writing a summary, which is for someone else, whether future you or your teacher or someone else in general, like in a class, you need to be able to explain yourself discreetly. So the idea of summary is a great opportunity. It's brief, it's short, it's encapsulative. It kind of goes over the big points. You don't need to tell a huge story, but you can do a lot of really cool things with a summary. It's relative to scope. So a G's essay is how long? Like 12, 15 pages? Give or take, yeah, it's been a while since I've read it, but it's pretty, I won't say short, but if I said summarize it in 3 pages, would that be easier than summarizing it in 1 paragraph? Because you have to make fewer choices, or would it be harder because it's longer? Kind of trade-off. Yeah. Scope is weird, right? So if I say write 1 sentence summarizing G's essay, could you do that? You only get 1 sentence, then it can't be longer than 25 words. Yeah, you feel up to it?
The difference between big D discourse and little d discourse in a social context.
Yeah, that's a pretty good explanation of what the topic is. So one of the things I always think about summary is a verb. What is the author doing? A text is not a thing. It's not an about thing. It's always an action, an actor acting in it. So in that essay, What is Discourse Analysis, James Paul G does this. He discusses blank in order to blank. It's this big picture. And to get there, he discusses little d, big D discourse. This part of that absolutely is a major point. So it's hard. It's hard to boil something down to 1 sentence. But that's that first sentence of any good summary, right? So how do you get from notes to draft? Revision is key. So you have to think about how you're going to revise something to ensure that what you're doing is readable by someone else. I always like to say the first draft is your draft. No one wants to see your draft. That's not true. People do want to see it. To get it to the next place. You don't submit that for grading or scoring, though. That's for someone else to think about, does it make sense to anyone else? The other shoe test. If someone were in your shoes, would they understand your words? Or do they need to know what you know for that paragraph to make sense? That's why you read out loud. That's why you read something the next day. That's why you get someone else to read it. That's what peers are good for. They see what you don't see because you're blind to your own blindness. That's the convenience of peer review. So revision is key. That's why you always check your drafts for typos. I think I have some really weird typos in here because Siri is not as, shall we say, vocabulary rich as a human like me might be. For example, mistranscriptions, she's capitalized in someone's salutation. Mistranscriptions, for example. There's one in here, I think, like caveat or calf yacht. So you know what a calf is, the back of your leg, and a yacht is a boat. A caveat is a different thing. It's like a rule of thumb that kind of applies. So she can't hear the differences, in part because, well, 1, I have Invisalign, so I talk funny right now. But 2, I talk funny in general because I talk so quickly and my words don't liaise all the time. And so Siri and I don't always get along. Note-taking and revision is an important process and if you use that dictation device. So what I want to do kind of here is take a minute to watch this 4-minute clip of George Lakoff talking about metaphors. This is important because metaphors are important, period. But George Lakoff is a really brilliant cognitive scientist, does a lot with the brain, and he teaches out west, but he talks a lot about metaphors and how metaphors frame our experience of the world. So what I want you to do for the next few minutes is watch this video, because what's going to happen next is you're going to get into groups of 2 and you're going to summarize this for each other. You're going to ask questions. So try to take some good notes as you watch this. I'll try to get the audio up on it. And if you're watching online, click on the link inside the PowerPoint, and you too will be able to watch this. After the ad, of course. Anybody else for YouTube ready yet? Subscription-based without advertising? I don't know if it's worth it or not, but you need to avoid stupid ads like this.
It's like $12
You can
for a
skip
month.
it.
Yeah, is it already there yet?
Yeah.
Thank you. I know it's like 5 or 8 seconds or something. Thank you for catching that.
For a TV, the world is thinking.
Framing is the most ordinary thing you do. You think in terms of structured scroll frames, and let me tell you just a bit about it. The work on this was done in the mid-1970s. 1974, frame analysis by Irving Goffman came out. 1975, the linguistic work of Charles Fillmore. Goffman looked at institutions and studied them by actually working in them. He worked in an insane asylum and in Las Vegas as a croupier in order to study them. Very serious research. Had to go to Las Vegas. Very scholarly. Now, what he discovered was this. Every institution is structured by a frame, and it has two parts. Roles or frame elements. For example, take a hospital. You have doctors, patients, nurses, orderlies, receptionists, instruments like scalpels, places like operating rooms. Those are the frame elements. Then there are scenarios. What happens in this frame? So you know that surgeons operate on patients with scalpels and operating rooms, right? And lots of other things happen in the frame. So that is what a frame is. And you know the boundaries. For example, you walk into the hospital to visit a friend. You go to the reception desk, there's a doctor lying there. They hand you a scalpel, and they say, you're operating on this doctor. It doesn't fit the frame. And you know it doesn't. Okay? That is called breaking the frame. It's outside of it. You think in terms of those frames, and they are physically realized in the neural circuitry of your brain. And one of the things that my colleague Jerry Feldman and his students at Berkeley have done is figure out the kind of neural computation needed to characterize frames. And it's actually pretty simple. There's a reason why we think in this way. Now, the other great result about frames is Charles Fillmore's. He's a member of my linguistics department, now retired, one of the great linguists in the world. He figured out that every word in every language is defined relative to a frame. Every word, like surgeon, or scalpel, or a menu for a restaurant, and so on. You understand it in terms of a structure like that. So this is normal. Frames are the most normal things in the world, and we'll see in a minute that they are thoroughly political. Then there's metaphor, and I'll tell you just briefly about that, because that is also thoroughly political. Let's take a non-political example. Take more is up and less is down, right? Or he's a warm person or a cold person. It's not just the language. You actually think in terms of those metaphors. Prices are going through the roof, not prices are going through the roof, not prices are going through the roof down, right? More is up. Now, why is that? Well, we learned, first of all, that this is not just true here, but in many cultures around the world. And not only that, it's many things like that. There are hundreds of such metaphors that are true around the world. And they're learned very early, and you don't know that you've learned them. How did you learn them? Well, it goes like this. Suppose you're a little kid, a baby. You watch your mother pouring formula into the bottle or water into a glass over and over every day. What's going on in your brain? Two parts of your brain are activated, one for quantity, one for verticality, and they're activated over and over and over, day after day, because the level always goes up. Where you're held as a child, and you feel affection and warmth together over and over, and that means your brain is activated in two places, one for affection, one for warmth, temperature in different parts of the brain. What happens is when they're activated over and over, the activation starts to spread. The more they're activated, the stronger it gets. The more they spread, the stronger it gets. The more they spread until they find the shortest path between them and form a circuit. And that circuit is the metaphor. more is up, or affection is wants. These metaphors, called primary metaphors, are physical. They're part of your physical brain. And by the time you're 6 or 7,
That should be good for that clip. What I'd like you to do now, and I noticed that I don't think one of you took, maybe two of you took notes about that. So it'd be interesting to see how you summarize this. So he's not the most entertaining, engaging speaker. His writing, however, is oftentimes scintillating and very engaging because he's very difficult to deal with as a human being. But he's a fun guy that listens to generally speaking. So what I'd like you to do now is summarize this. Take 2 minutes, pair up, find someone else. I think one of you in each of these tables doesn't have a partner, so everyone else can pair up. Yeah, and make sure that you debrief each other. All I want you to do, one of you is going to be the questioner, the other person's going to be the talker. You're welcome to use a recording device like Siri on a smartphone, or just take notes as you like. You're more than welcome to do that. All I want you to do is answer these questions that are up on the board. You're welcome to come write them down, or I can read them to you out loud. All I want you to do is to debrief and then write a paragraph from those questions. So take your time, take your 2 or 3 minutes to do that. Decide who's going to be the debriefer, who's going to be the answerer, and write out the responses, or ideally record these responses. And just as a suggestion, you may not want to sit 2 groups at a table because as you talk and record, you may get some interloping feedback.
We were first. Ladies first.
You actually did sit down first.
So these are pretty straightforward questions that respond to the summary prompt specifically. Start with a container sentence that identifies the text and author. I cannot tell you how many times I've read summaries where the paragraph forgets to tell the reader, oh, by the way, the text is this, the author or authors is this. So if you write, the essay is about this, my first question is, well, which essay? Well, we don't even know what we're talking about. It's that easy to skip over. So when you start with identifying this rhetorical information off the bat, it's so much easier to talk about that text. So what is the text about? That identifies the topic. And the next question is, ask yourself or the peer what the author is doing in the text. Think about a verb: argue, discuss, debates, explores, illustrate. What's the one big verb that's taking place here? So you're trying to get a big context. We're building towards the ideal first sentence of a summary. So go ahead and start answering these questions, taking notes, ideally using the audio feature. But if you want to handwrite, because you're welcome to.
All right. So I guess
You can ask me.
questions.
That's okay. I
I
was really spacing out during the video.
I think you just use that to make your questions. Like starters and then see them work. Yeah.
And
Some of the questions like who's the author or whatever.
or when you have a question, anything that way you get her writing all out, so you don't think twice about it.
Right now,
Yes. Are we both writing a paragraph?
No, we're just like.
Yeah, one asks, one reports. My suggestion is to open a notepad or notes on there, and then press the microphone button.
Oh, good.
You don't want to type it out. You just want your report. So you ask questions, and that kind of thing.
Oh, good.
Like an author, but it's just
So, yeah, so we have a
I
question.
don't know.
Who's the author? Who's the author?
So, like, 5 minutes. We discuss it.
Oh, that makes sense. Open a press the speaker button, and then
George
say to one another, who is the author?
George
What's the title? And then if you play, so that he is in the phone recording. We have a question to answer, so you guys all have good ideas.
We don't like Siri.
We're old school this one.
Yeah, 800 for a second. Okay. What would you do?
Talks about metaphors.
So my suggestion here is to open a notepad for notes. and then press the microphone button and you ask questions. Generally, answers.
Yeah.
That's the goal you're trying to work toward, because it's a lot easier just writing out and taking time to think while you're writing.
Oh, she's so annoying.
How metaphors are created on a language, how they are universal,
Why is she taking my words
they are
away?
a consequence of our
Delete
brain.
annoying. What delete?
So, I mean, I can
Howdy. Yeah.
Howdy. answer those three questions.
Metaphors are great. Are
I really don't like
how old they are a consequence of our brain.
Okay, you ready to go?
Yeah.
What is the author?
It didn't work out.
And her boyfriend keeps saying.
Oh,
It was the first
the
time the
author
whole
is
time.
teaching. Yeah, pretty much.
Usually, if you want, you can use your iPhone to record
Teach it.
thousands of questions. So,
Yeah.
my contention is that when you write, you think, and you're asking questions, you think, your competitors are thinking that.
What's the
You're just you're not thinking about it, you're not worried about it. So if you turn on your notes and you press the microphone button, you can actually record yourself having a conversation, not worry about that aspect of writing.
Well, first,
Writing
it's thematic there.
So people that try to
Those that did research on that, then you just exemplify those two pieces, and then you simply exemplify that with different metaphors that we'll have.
It's gonna put it down twice.
Or Peter puts so. I've never used Siri before. You take this by Peter says that takes us like 18 years.
Okay, what's next?
Woodstock. Woodstock.
Another question?
Here's Woodstock.
Instead of.
What keywords?
I don't know what
examples
we're
of the
supposed to do
author
there.
used to do this point?
Ask yourself, or your what step
What
the author
keywords are
takes.
examples of the author used to get his going to girls?
Think of it history, wasn't it?
To get his point.
You didn't make it interesting, just like sat there, like, didn't even show his eyes.
Okay, let's go ahead and reconvene. You might have to kind of walk through this process, because this is not gonna work right now. This cannot work right now, because it's so new and it's something that you're not able to try it in the way you want to. It's being forced on you. So I understand that. You're just being exposed to think about it. How can you use this as a tool in the future? Did you ever think about using your iPhone or your smartphone to record something?
No.
Why not? You ever seen anyone else do it?
Yeah.
Here's the thing, people complain about everyone in 2016, kids today, that kind of thing. They all use their smartphones and they're doing these things. They're not talking in class, they're just communicating on their iPhones, whatever, what have you. But you have a tool available to you that I'd like to meet you in the middle with, because if you can use that as a tool to produce better writing, why not use that medium? That seems to me to be an economical and efficient way to doing things. Don't change your process because you want to try something new necessarily, but try something new and see if it does have any effect on your process. Maybe it doesn't belong right in the middle of the process. Maybe it belongs at the beginning or at the end or something else in that way. Maybe you want to try it out on something that's low points, low value. It doesn't really matter. But here's my question. If we were to go through these first three questions, we get some pretty good information. And I want you to leave with a good sentence. That's my goal here, a good topic sentence. So who's the author of the text?
George
Lakoff, right? What's the name of the text? You remember? Idea framing, metaphors, and your brain. That was the title of this text. Okay, what's it about? And I hate that question because it's so general and generous and round. But if you had to name a topic, it's about what?
How we understand language.
Sure, how we understand language. So that's the topic that we're discussing here. Here's the next question, perhaps the more important question. What does George Lakoff do in the text? What's the verb? What is he doing? Discussing. That's good. Anyone else have another verb comparable to that?
Explaining.
Explaining is good? Yeah, perfect. So this is a really great first sentence you have going on, right? So you have, in idea framing metaphors in your brain, George Lakoff discusses what? Now here's the real question. What is he discussing? We've got a topic. That's too general. Let's get it more specific.
How we think in terms of metaphors?
Great, yeah. So how metaphors frame how we see the world around us, period. If you were to tell someone that sentence, do you think someone would kind of get the idea of what that video was about and say, no, I don't need to watch that? Imagine that were your cause, your purpose. You wanted to save someone from having to watch those 5.5 minutes of George Lakoff talking about ideas framing in your brain. Would that have been a good sentence to get them an idea of what they're missing out on or not missing out on in our case? Yeah, I think so too. That's what a good topic sentence does. It's comprehensive in the sense that it prepares your reader. And I know that if you're in Terra class, you know what cabin is.
Yeah.
And how do you understand cabin?
It's comprehensive.
Comprehensive.
Accurate,
Accurate.
brief,
Okay, let's mix it up. Okay, brief. What else? Who else?
Independent.
Independent. Yeah, and what else? One more. Neutral. Thank you. And those are those things. So it's great that you all know that because it makes it so much easier for you to understand that a summary can't be analytical, it can't be personal, it can't be opinions-based. It should be neutral, independent from outside. Anyone who reads it should be able to understand it. So if you say, in this text called this by this person, he does this, you accounted for all of those things, and you're off to a roaring start. So that's the idea of using your phone as an interventional device here to kind of brainstorm ideas, to take your writing and move it to the writing stage, your thinking to the thinking stage. Because when you write and you think at the same time, you're doing 2 writing moments and 2 thinking moments at the same time. That's what causes you to produce drafts that have errors that you don't understand you made, or you don't catch. If you do it with the iPhone, the smartphone, the computer, you have the opportunity to see your comments ahead of time, to see how they work, what you were thinking, and work from those notes into a really good first draft. So that's the idea here, and that's what you should take into writing your next summary. So by tonight, let's see, we have 10 hours and a half now. You should be able to come up with a really strong sentence to describe, geez, what is discourse analysis, or Winsett and Beardsley's the intentional fallacy in 1 sentence. It shouldn't seem impossible. Answer those 4 questions, right? Or 3 questions rather. What's it called? Who wrote it? What's it about? And what does he do? Or what do they do? Great first sentence. Everything proceeds from there, and I will just leave it at that. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, and we'll close down the feed.
Yeah.
And